The Virginia Cable Telecommunications Association and your local cable provider presents Cable Reports. Join us now as Cable Reports brings you up to date on current issues facing the Commonwealth through discussions with your local legislators and other policymakers from across Virginia.
From the General Assembly in the City of Richmond, I'm Woody Evans for Cable Reports and Cox Communications, connecting Virginians to their government. And let's connect you this morning with Delegate Kory. Welcome.
Good morning, and thank you for talking with me.
The Democrats swept all three statewide offices. We have a new governor, a new attorney general, and a new lieutenant governor who, by the way, yesterday cast the first tie-breaking vote in the Senate. We had a special election that was won yesterday in Loudoun County by a new Democratic senator. We've got an election in the Senate still subject to a recount, but the House of Delegates is still controlled 2/3 by Republicans. How does it feel being in the minority in the House of Delegates?
It's always interesting to be in the minority in the House of Delegates. As long as I've been in office, and now this is the 5th year, that's the position that I have been in. One remark about the past election, and that is that a difference of 400 votes would have turned 6 or 7 House seats Democratic.
Wow,
statewide.
A difference of 400 votes.
400 votes, right. We just have to work harder to get the vote out. It's frustrating sometimes, but the frustration is different every session. And right now, what I'm experiencing in the House of Delegates is a vastly accelerated calendar where the majority of the bills that Democrats have filed are being held much sooner in the cycle than is usual, and grouped together starting very early in the morning. So it's not uncommon to have 4 or 5 bills before whatever time it is right now.
Yeah, and I know you have a very busy schedule. I know you serve on 3 committees, but the subcommittee work is really important because I think that's when those bills are usually heard.
Right.
7 a.m. meetings or something.
Yes, they're starting already. Well, started last week, 7 o'clock in the morning. So I believe that there's an attempt by the majority party to sort of clear the calendar of the bills that they don't agree with from the minority party, and to do that in a very quick fashion before there can be much involvement on the part of the new governor, lieutenant governor, and attorney general.
I see. Now, you still serve on 3 committees, I believe, counties?
No, this time I'm on 2 committees. Militia, Police and Public Safety, and General Laws.
Oh, General Laws.
Which is new for me and very, very interesting. I'm absolutely delighted to be on that committee.
So tell us what you're hearing from back home, what you heard last year, and what you continue to hear from your constituents about the issues important to them.
I have a survey that I mailed out, and I've gotten at least 500 hard copy back and almost that many email survey participants, and I'm still collating those results. My constituents really care about ease of voting and are interested in having the polls open longer, having more absentee in-person voting. A number of them had trouble in the last election. And to that end, I put in a bill for those 65 and over to be able to vote in person, absentee, no excuses. I was actually asked to do that by NARF and the AARP. Unfortunately, the subcommittee that I presented that bill to didn't think it was necessary. So it's not an option for me to pursue anymore. And there are a number of people at home who are disappointed. A couple of issues that that have come up mostly from parents' concerns with the education system that I've pursued this session. One is treatment of students who have suffered concussions, student athletes who have been injured on the playing field, and how that injury has been handled. But there's growing concern about how students who have suffered concussions are supported in the classroom. And a number of families in my district have very sad stories to tell, and one of the families is actually suing the school system because their child did not get what they deemed the necessary academic support. And actually, I have a sad story that I won't tell you about one of my children and a concussion and the academic effects. And I am delighted to say that I was able to combine my concerns with those of Delegate Anderson, and now we have a bipartisan concussion treatment for student athletes bill that seems to be going forward.
Great, great. A perennial issue here is the ability of a local school district to exercise its discretion as to when school starts. We have the old King's Dominion law that's still on the book. There are a lot of exceptions to it, but I know that's an issue that you're working on again.
You're right. I am working on it again. It is a major issue, and I think this school year will be a very clear example of why the school systems need the freedom to decide when they want to begin the school year. Fairfax County has already used up all their snow days, and they are going to be going, way into the end of June to make up those days. If they'd been able to start before Labor Day, they would not have this problem. So there are a number of delegates from both sides of the aisle who are pushing this issue.
And of course, last year, the General Assembly passed a law that allows the state, to the extent a local school district is deemed to be failing, to actually take over a school under those circumstances. What kind of reaction are you getting at the local level?
Outrage. Outrage. It takes that legislation takes all power away from the locality, from the elected officials at the school board level, at the county level, and from parents, and also takes their money, because the legislation directs that not only the state education funds that would go to that school will go to the Education Opportunity Institute, but that the local tax match will also go. I think that it is a very, very bad bill. There are a lot of other ways to provide aid to schools that seem to be stuck in a perennially failing cycle. And we do have some interesting bills coming up that would modify the way that the law that we currently have works.
I don't know if there's any litigation pending currently with regard to that legislation that was passed, but if my memory serves me correctly, the previous Attorney General indicated that he didn't think it was constitutional and that he would not defend a lawsuit if such litigation did occur.
You're right. And there is talk of a lawsuit coming out of Alexandria. And I think that is going to stay only at the talk level until the new Attorney General has had a chance to staff and consult, because you don't want to ask an Attorney General for an opinion until you've had a chance to find out how they feel on an issue.
Absolutely. A companion bill related to grading of schools.
Yes.
How has that gone over?
Again, parents and realtors and local school boards are all very upset about the new school quote-unquote grading system, A through F, which replaces the label of accredited or accredited with warning. And I have to tell you that I never supported that idea. The rationale was supposed to be that it was too hard for parents to understand what accredited meant. I have to say, I think that's pretty insulting. And what you really end up with if you have this A through F system is we are ranking schools by income. And that's reprehensible. So I'm trying to repeal it.
Great. Standards of learning.
Yes.
They are on the agenda. There have been a lot of complaints from teachers, parents, students. I believe students now are subject to 34 of these, in addition to other tests they have to take during the year, and then the content has been called into question as well. Yes. So how are things playing out with regard to reform in that area?
Well, I do believe that's a subject that is on everyone's mind down here, not just the new governor, but many, many legislators as well. And there are a lot of bills that have been filed about that would change some of the details of the SOL administration. I filed a bill to study the problems that localities have with SOLs, because I've talked to a number of school systems and they each have a different way they'd like to change it. And I think that before we have legislation, we need to hear more from the localities and, and the teachers and parents, etc. However, I do think that a few changes will go through. I think school systems will be granted the flexibility of administering the tests at the beginning of the school year or in the middle of the school year instead of at the end, or at least to some students at their discretion.
Now, what about diminishing the number of tests? I think there are 34 now. I've seen some suggestions that it would be diminished to 26.
Well, there are a lot of pieces of legislation that get rid of one test or another, or say no testing at a certain grade level, and it's a real mix. It seems that the timing of the administration of the tests, there's consensus in all the bills I've seen about the SOLs, but the rest of it, I have no idea how it'll turn out.
The governor gets high marks for his new secretary, his new cabinet members. There's a new Secretary of Education.
Oh, yes.
And do you know whether the new Secretary of Education has weighed in on this issue?
Actually, I don't know. I was part of the Education Transition Policy Team, and we talked about the SOLs. I have talked actually to the new Secretary of Education, but it was in the context of career and technical education. So I don't know how she feels about it. But you did bring up, you caused me to think of an issue, which is ethics reform, that
yes.
A lot of my constituents, and I'm sure many legislators' constituents, are more or less clamoring for. And there are some bills that I think will go forward. I have a bill that, as every legislator says, oh, this is common sense, oh, this is simple. My bill is common sense and simple. It simply changes it defines family. It defines who you have to include when you make your economic interest statement, when a legislator files that every year, and how you have to include gifts, include holdings by more than just yourself or your spouse. But there are other bills, and so I'm confident there will be some reform made to the way we report our financial status. But there's consensus in the legislature that the majority are not comfortable dealing with campaign finance reform.
And of course, the new governor, his second day in office, I believe, issued an executive order that applies to the governor and his staff in terms of ethics, a cap on the amount of money they can take, more transparency and disclosure
right.
as well.
Right, and I support him doing that, and I hope that's an example that the rest of us will follow.
And of course, there are initiatives that would require the creation of an independent commission to give people advice and counsel, but to also overlook right. What's going on in terms of gifts and disclosures.
I think that's a very good idea. Many states have one form of commission or a committee that is in charge of ethics, enforcement, and education. I'm not sure how our version will turn out. I hope that we would ultimately have an independent commission that has some staff and is actually separate from the legislative and executive function. That's what I'd like to see.
You mentioned vocational and technical education, and of course, our junior colleges play a role in that, but I think some people are thinking more along the lines of a greater emphasis on vocational education. There are jobs that youngsters out of high school, if they are trained appropriately, can garner that would pay them much more than even a living wage. Can you talk to us about the importance of that?
I've always thought that we needed to do more on the high school level in terms of offering training and certification in careers that don't require college or university education. And one of the things that I started as a school board member was a program for fire science and EMT that students graduate from not only certified as emergency medical technicians,
right,
but also with hazmat certification, a number of other ones. And that has grown from a dozen students the first year to more than 80 students a year now graduating from that program. And the local fire departments are so pleased because the students already know the area and they reflect the local population. That is what I was talking to the new Secretary of Education about. And I had firefighters with me, and we wanted to improve that, have that program throughout the Commonwealth. That's just one example. There are so many. We started pharmacy tech in Fairfax along with the fire science, and that also gives a student a good living right after they graduate from high school.
Great.
So you're correct. We have to move more in that way.
And of course, that's not to diminish the initiative of those who want to attend junior college or attend our institutions of higher learning. You've got Northern Virginia Community College. It's a great school.
It is a great school.
Talk to us about the importance of our community colleges and the necessity to obtain adequate funding for them.
Our community colleges really offer a high-quality education, but they are all so stressed. Northern Virginia Community College starts classes as early as 6:30 or 7 in the morning, and they go right through till 9 or 10 o'clock at night. That's the demand that they are trying to fill, and parking is a total headache. We do need to fund our community colleges at a much higher level. They truly are the most accessible higher ed that we offer in Virginia. And in Northern Virginia, and I think throughout the Commonwealth as well, the community colleges are starting to work much more closely with the local high schools to offer dual enrollment and participation for seniors on the campus of the community college to encourage students to understand how affordable college can be if it's through the community college. And I would like to see that effort grown.
And of course, the 2+2 program is critical for those who want to advance to an institution of higher learning, because if you maintain certain grade point average, you are automatically admitted to Virginia Tech, the University of Virginia, George Mason, for example,
yes,
which is big.
And that absolutely is a great achievement. It took a while for us to get there, but I'm delighted that we have that. I wanted to say one word about in-state tuition for early childhood arrivals. That's an issue that I've been working on. The governor supports. I had a bill in last year. I have a bill in this year. Really quickly, there's a federal program that President Obama instituted that if you go through some serious vetting, if you are a high school graduate in Virginia and your parents are undocumented and you were brought here as an infant or a toddler, you can get a reprieve for 2 years and apply for another 2-year reprieve. If you have that status, and there's just a few thousand in Virginia who do at the moment, you can get a driver's license and a work permit. But you're not granted in-state tuition, which means if you want to contribute to the workforce in Virginia, you have to pay 3 times as much as any other Virginian to advance your education, and that is just a very, very difficult burden.
As a school board member, let me draw upon your experience in terms of the importance of pre-kindergarten education. Why is that important?
Well, there are so many studies, Woody, that show that early education is really the key to a successful career and a much more beneficial to everyone future life. I'm not saying it very well, but if we had pre-K available for all the at-risk students, which basically means low-income students, we would make such a difference. Right now, Virginia is only serving about half of the low-income 4-year-olds in the state, and there are 33,000 students who are in the Virginia Preschool Initiative and Head Start, and again, that many who are not being served that way. And ask any elementary school teacher and they will tell you the huge difference between a student who has had early learning before they enter kindergarten and the students who haven't. It's just such a leg up. All the tests show it makes a huge difference.
Back to our junior colleges, I believe there is a tuition assistance program, TAG, available for those who want to advance beyond the junior college level.
Yes, and by the way, that is not available to any of one of the students who's an early arrival that I was talking about. But yes, and I think we are, in the current budget, we have also increased the TAG grant amount. It would be a real blessing to many people if we could increase it more than that, and I hope the new governor will do that next year.
And of course, the cost of higher education continues to rise.
Yes.
We've got a number of students from out of state who help subsidize our budgetary woes, at least in terms of our institutions of higher learning. It's hard to maintain that balance. We don't want to discourage that diversity we get from the out of state students on the one hand, but we want to make sure that students domiciled here obtain entry into those great institutions as well.
Right. I absolutely agree. And last year, the General Assembly increased the number of in-state seats at the majority of the universities in Virginia. However, Virginia pays very, very little of the cost of higher education. We have cut almost in half the per pupil expenditure for higher ed that the state offers over the past 10 years. That is shameful. You know, the state still exercises total authority, yet we expect universities to support themselves. And I think we have to look at that as higher ed is a big investment, and you need to pay upfront for the results that we'll get afterwards.
What about teacher salaries at the local level? I believe the new governor has suggested an additional $3 million for Northern Virginia. The cost of living is greater there.
Yes.
But of course, people need to understand that it's not only for teachers, but if you're a firefighter or a policeman, you're going to get paid more.
Exactly. And one of the issues that we are still discussing that are carryover from a few years ago is if support positions in schools like principals and librarians will be included in that extra cost of living boost. However, every time we do that on the state level, the local school systems have to match it.
Right.
And in Fairfax, it's usually $2 from Fairfax and $1 from the state. I think we have a responsibility to put that option out there, and I hope that the localities will be able to take advantage of it once it's enacted.
I hear transportation is still a big issue. We have a funding vehicle now as a result of legislation last year, but some people didn't like parts of it, like a tax on hybrid vehicles. I believe you have something to say about that.
Yes, I do, and many of my colleagues feel the same way, that a tax on hybrid vehicles is a disincentive to protect our environment, and there is a disproportionate number of hybrid vehicles in Northern Virginia as opposed to the rest of the state, which makes my constituents feel even more that it's an unfair tax. And so many people would like to see that tax lifted that I'm pretty sure it will be gone by the end of this session. However, we need to look at other ways to supplement education funding. It's going to be a never-ending balancing act.
Now, we have a number of military installations around the Commonwealth. We have a number of government employees in Northern Virginia.
Yes.
The governor talked about the necessity to diversify our economy because of things that go on in Washington, the most notable being sequestration, which has had an impact on the Commonwealth.
Right.
How do we diversify the economy to ensure that we aren't adversely affected by actions of the federal government?
It's a very difficult question to answer. I think that we have proven that Virginia can be a center for technical innovation, and we need to promote that as much as possible. And then we're into a lot of economic incentives, offering businesses that we don't already have here to come. The governor was already talking to Carnival Cruise Lines. Mm-hmm. And they agreed to return to Virginia. I think Northern Virginia really is hoping that we will be able to diversify, since my district is so tied to the federal government that every time a cut comes through, the ripple effect is exceedingly difficult.
If we may, let's turn to health care. There are two very important issues there relating to mental health because of a tragedy of one of your colleagues in the Senate, although mental health has been on the agenda for quite a while.
Right.
And then, of course, Medicaid expansion. Can you talk to us about the importance of those issues and what's likely to happen?
I actually can't predict what's going to happen. Almost every day in the chamber we discuss those issues. And really, Medicaid expansion should be called bridging the health insurance gap, because that's what it's all about. There are 400,000 Virginians who are without health insurance, and that is a serious economic problem besides a moral issue. And I am looking forward to the debate where we can push this whole issue onto a different plane and all agree that we are going to do something and discuss what exactly that is. And there are a number of women's health issues mixed up in that as well. What would we allow to be covered and what we wouldn't? And I have to say that the women's health issues are very complex, and most of them, I think, should be taken out of the General Assembly's purview. I don't think the General Assembly has the right to legislate procedures that are available to a patient, to come in between a patient and a doctor. And also, now we are debating about if birth control will be covered by an insurance exchange, which again, I think is an invasive conversation. And it's also restricting commerce.
We have less than a minute left, but I wanted you to give us a few words on the reform of the mental health system. Senator Creed and his son suffered a great tragedy. I know there is a lot of legislation dealing with that. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Basically, we underfund what we already have. We don't really fund the programs that we say we have to the level they need to be funded. Right now, I think we're back at the level of 2008 funding, which is not at all acceptable. And one of the major issues is coordination between all the different organizations that have a hand in determining where someone's going to get their care and how they're going to be cared for. So we have a big, big chore ahead of us, and we need money and we need some reorganization.
Great. Thank you for being here today, Delegate Kaye Kory. Thank you for watching Cable Reports, brought to you by the Virginia Cable Television Association and Cox Communications, connecting Virginians to their government. Until next time, I am Woody Evans.